Today, we will be discussing the job search process as well as developing your social capital. When you think about the job search, many of us come into it from a variety of different perspectives. Sometimes we have no idea where to begin. Maybe we have a job idea, but we haven't taken action yet. You've decided on a direction, but haven't done anything quite yet. Know your job focus and have some connections. Maybe you're in the interview process and actually have accepted a job. So, wherever you are today, know that that's absolutely great. We can begin exactly where you are. The hidden job market. What do you think are the percentage of jobs and internships that are not advertised online? A, 10 to 25%, B, 20 to 35%, C, 60 to 75%, or D, 70 to 85%. The shocking answer is D. 70 to 85% of jobs and internships are not advertised online. So, where are these positions and how are they actually filled? That's what we're going to discuss today. If you've not come across the term social capital, this is identifying key connections that you have established, also finding new connections in careers of interest, and also utilizing your relationships and networks to create value in your job search. Basically, social capital is the combination of reputation plus all of the different relationships that you have. When you think about social capital, this is accessing other people's time, getting support for ideas and innovation, possibly resources such as their expertise and even sometimes money. When you think about social capital, just as we think about money, it is very important for you to start gaining new relationships in your life, especially those who can really speak into the career that you are highly interested in and can provide their own areas of expertise. So, how exactly do you measure social capital? Relationships, as we all know, take a lot of time and energy to develop. So, when you initially think about it, we have to start with the connections that you may already have. So, how many of your connections that you currently have do you actually interact with daily, maybe weekly, monthly, or yearly? How many different kinds of connections do you have in your network? Are people in your network very similar to you, or do you have a nice diversity of relationships? How much access to different resources, networks, and influences do you have through these relationships? I want to discuss this concept of the front door or the side door approach. Exactly which one should I use? So, if I were to ask you, which door would you approach based on the relationship that you have with the person who lives there? What might you say for the front door approach? Many people going to a front door, this alludes to someone that you don't know, possibly someone you've never met before, and so you're approaching them for the very first time. You see their front door. Lots of people see the front door. It's usually on the outside of the house, easily accessible, and a lot of times locked. The front door approach allows us to look at that formal connection. Many people can knock at that door. The competition is extremely high versus the side door approach. When you think about those relationships where you enter through the side door, consider who these individuals are. Most likely, they are more informal connections. Only a few people can enter this way, making the competition much lower. This is a very similar concept when we think about career search and developing very key relationships. Most people do a career search with the front door approach. It's a very formal approach. Many people can enter that particular job world in the very same way, thus making the competition very high. But those who are very wise and strategize with their career development use the side door approach. They look for those key connections that they already have or need to develop in their life. Again, very few people can enter the job world this way, making your competition very, very low in your job search. This is obviously the best approach And yet, so few people actually use it. We all naturally gravitate towards this front door approach instead. And so, we're going to talk about the differences and the strategies of each. One of the best side door approaches is through this concept of networking and connecting with other people. One of the key terms that we use is something called career conversations or informational interviewing. This is not you being interviewed, this is you interviewing professionals to learn more about what they do. A few places to potentially start are through your faculty, potentially staff that you already have connections to. It could be through networking events on and off campus, could be through student organizations that you've been part of, networking with alumni, and also through LinkedIn. There are lots of different ways to be able to connect with other people, to be able to establish and set up these career conversations. But what exactly does a career conversation look like? When you establish what you want to do, the type of career you want to explore, you want to identify that career and then start considering who can I connect to in that particular career path that has expertise and a background that I really need to learn from. Once you identify key people, this is where you communicate and schedule a time to meet with them. There are lots of different ways that you can do this, whether it's in person, over the phone, over Zoom, and sometimes through email if appropriate. Prepare a list of questions and prepare the things that you want to ask. What exactly do you want to know about their career to help fill the gaps in your knowledge? Meet with them. Usually, I request 20 to 30 minutes to start, and most often it lasts much longer than that. But start small. And then always follow up with a thank you note. So make sure you're sending a thank you note after every career conversation to showcase your gratitude for their time that they have taken to spend sharing their expertise with you. In your brand management plan, this is an informational interview project that you will be working on over the next few weeks. Use this page as you talk to your individual of choice to gather that information into one place for reflection. The following questions are those that you will need to ask and get responses for. How did you get started in this career field? What is your educational background? And what education do you recommend for this career field? What do you like most and least about your career? What does a typical day in your career look like? What types of experiences would I need to gain prior to going into that career field? And also, what additional advice would you like to share about your career field that you wish someone had shared with you before you entered the career field itself? Use these questions as starting points. You can also ask additional questions based on your industry if you would like to do so. Now let's talk about different types of job searches. And this is more from that front door approach. But we are going to talk about the differences between traditional industry and also the academic job search. A traditional job search normally starts with a job announcement, whether it's on a major job board or also the company's website. There is an application submission process, which normally covers your resume, your cover letter, and also references, which usually are recommended to not give until they are requested. Usually, the job search for an industry position is made up of a search committee, usually one plus individuals, depending on the industry that you're going into. And also, the wait time also depends on the industry. Some industries are a little bit quicker with their process, and others may be drawn out a bit more. Usually, in this type of job search, there is an initial interview, most likely over phone or through Zoom or another virtual platform. The second round interview could also potentially be virtual, but most likely will be in person. It could incorporate a panel, possibly a one on one, as well as a small group interview, given the type of industry that you're going into. The third interview for some industries is when you might meet with additional leadership. After you have gone through the interview process, if you have made it through to the final round, that is when most reference checks are requested. So make sure you have 3 or 4 individuals on your reference sheet that are willing to discuss your qualifications and what make you a good fit for that particular role. Once the reference checks have been contacted, that is when an offer is extended and salary negotiation, if applicable, can be done. Once you have accepted or declined a particular offer, make that be your answer. Try not to go back and forth and cause the timeline to be stretched out. Remember, it's just as frustrating for the employer when you are holding back. They really need to know your answer, usually within 48 hours. But it is okay to ask for that extension if necessary. Once you have accepted the offer, that is when the background check will begin, as well as any other paperwork for that particular industry or office. Again, this is a front door approach, but some of the different traditional job resources are the following. Hire a Niner is a UNC Charlotte specific job board where you can look for on and off campus jobs and internships. This particular job board is a little bit like the side door approach in that employers specifically come to UNC Charlotte to recruit talent. The competition is much lower than some of the mainstream websites, so I highly recommend you starting with Hire a Niner before you go to any of these additional sites. LinkedIn is another fabulous way to be able to look for jobs worldwide. We will be covering LinkedIn in a future session in depth, but go ahead and take time to look through the job board yourself and get a sense of the different filters you can use to narrow down your job search. For those of you who are interested in working for nonprofits, Idealist is a key job board for you to know about. When you go to Idealist, you can narrow it down by job title, as well as city and state. usajobs.gov is the specific website for those of you who might be interested in working in government. This is a very key website for you to get connected to if that is your career goal. Glassdoor, similar to LinkedIn, is a wonderful website where you can read reviews on the company, see the organization ratings, find salary information, even identify different interview questions that might be for a particular employer. Check it out, see how it is helpful for you, and just like LinkedIn, it is also a free platform. Going global is again a very specific UNC Charlotte accessible type of job board. Going global can be accessed through both the International Student Scholar Office as well as the Career Center website. Make sure you go through either of these sites and not on your own because you'll have to pay for this service if you go to the website just on its own. For this particular job board, this is for an international job search. So for those of you who may want to work abroad or intern abroad, or even identify employers that are nationwide and abroad, this particular job board is a really good fit for that. Also for international students who might be studying here in the United States, it also provides a lot of really good information on visas, as well as typical things that you might come across in a job search if you are an international student looking for residency here in the States. Now let's talk about the academic job search. And what I mean by academic job search is for those of you who are considering becoming faculty at a university. For academic jobs, again, very similar to industry positions, there will be a job announcement. Usually these job announcements are a bit more lengthy than traditional industry, so make sure you're reading the fine print. For this, there are a few other things that you might have to submit for this job application. Your CV, which is a curriculum vitae, which is for academic purposes. This is going to include everything from your research, publications, grants, teaching experience, etc. A little bit different than a resume. You will also submit a cover letter very similar to industry, but unsimilar to industry, you will be submitting a teaching philosophy, a research philosophy, writing samples, as well as letters of recommendation, not just a reference sheet. So very different type of package here that you are submitting to the employer versus industry roles. Most likely for academic job search, you will have a committee of 4 to 6 individuals within that department who is hiring for that role. And the wait time honestly depends on the university, but mainly it will take a few months, if not up to half a year, depending on how quickly they are moving to fill a particular position. In the academic job search, the first interview usually can come through conferences, and it also can be field based and sometimes phone. The second interview, the more formal interview, will be in person, and it will be individual faculty with you one on one, a small group of faculty with you, as well as the chair of the department discussing your particular role within their department. Most individuals going into academia also have to provide a job talk, which most likely will be focused on their graduate research, whether it be a master's thesis or a doctoral dissertation. This job talk usually lasts up to an hour and is presented to most likely the faculty within that department and sometimes graduate students. Once all of this process goes through, the recommendation letters are extremely important. It is absolutely essential that your recommenders are able to speak to your ability to not only be a faculty from a teaching standpoint, but also your research ability. Once that process has gone through, the offer may be extended. Other things may be considered as far as moving expenses, also possibly startup research or even conference funds that you can also negotiate. Then finally, very similar to industry, you will be going through background checks as well as paperwork for that university. LinkedIn can also be a really good way to connect with faculty at a variety of universities worldwide. We will again cover this more in depth in a few weeks. Some of the very specific, though, front door approach job boards would be higheredjobs.com, which hosts both staff and faculty positions at universities, the Chronicle of Higher Education, that look at faculty and leadership positions within higher ed, the Higher Education Recruitment Consortium, as well as Glassdoor. Very similar to industry, it is extremely helpful through Glassdoor to actually look at reviews of certain universities before applying there to make sure that that culture will be a very good fit for you. In addition to both the traditional industry and also academic job search, I wanted to provide a few resources for our international students who are looking to come to the United States to work full time. A few of the job boards that I would recommend are My Visa Jobs, Going Global again, that you can access through the Career Center, another website called Emmy Help, Foreign Born, OPT Nation, which will go into a little bit more depth on the OPT process, as well as the Foreign Labor Certification Data Center, which also has a lot of very helpful information. In addition to some of these front door approach websites, I highly recommend you looking at our career community pages. Each of our career community pages also has additional job boards that you can access within certain industries. Finally, one of the areas that we will explore is ONET. ONET is a fabulous website where you can explore career types, look at necessary skills, also degree levels required, as well as values and interests. When you come into ONET, you will be on this particular homepage. For instance, if I come up here to the search bar, I'm just going to type in software. And immediately, all of these keywords that have something in relation to software comes up. I'm going to click on this very first one that says software developers and read a little bit more about it. So for myself, if I am looking into maybe a complementary career, a career that I don't know much about, I love coming to ONET to be able to explore this career a little bit more in depth. My recommendation initially is to look at this top paragraph because ONET will provide a short paragraph with an overarching sense of what this career entails. Once you identify that this is a career of interest, that is when you can start exploring ONET's website in a little bit more detail. The summary page is my favorite, but you can also look at the different tabs as you come across to make sure that that fits your style. One of the things I really love about ONET is that if you don't know much about a particular role, you can learn a lot about it through this task list. When you're looking down this task list and identifying some of those key things that this person in this role would do every day, do these things sound interesting? Are they types of activities that would intrigue you, satisfy you, and bring purpose into your everyday? If you can say that yes, they would, Then continue to read down the page to learn so much more about this particular career path, from technology skills to detailed work activities, types of training and credentials that you may need. There are different types of information on wages and employment trends, which you can also narrow down by state and also zip code. And because this is a bright outlook job, which can be shown from the little suns on the right hand side, that is a really good sense that there will be jobs in this field once you graduate. I personally love this section at the bottom called Related Occupations, which will give complementary job titles to someone in this role. So while you may be interested in this particular position, you might also want to look into these other career paths which have very similar traits. Back in your brand management plan, you will see a tab titled Careers. This is where you will be filling out this tab for today's lesson. Please include the different types of career industries, the job position, the function of the position, as well as the other key questions found within this particular page on this tab. The additional page that you will begin today is your Professional Communications tab. As we start going through all of the different connections from your social capital list, I want you to think about all of those individuals who are experts in your field of interest. Start connecting with them. For this particular page, you will list their name, their email, their phone number, if they have an organization website, the type of position that they're currently in, as well as the different types of communication, the email date that you send them an invitation to for that particular career conversation, as well as your actual discussion date. You can also put in notes into this section from your discussion to help you remember what you discussed. Remember, there are a lot of different ways that you can gain social capital, and so be creative as you start filling this list with relevant contacts. If you have any questions about this search, the front door or side door approach, or any of the websites that I have mentioned today, please bring those to next week's session. I hope you enjoyed today's session on the job search and social capital, and I will see you next week.